Naimbag na December tayo. Today we're going to discuss your endocrine system. So what is your endocrine system? This is a system that would now consist of what you call your endocrine glands. These glands would now secrete what you call your hormones. These hormones are substances that are very important in controlling different functions in the body. But before we discuss each gland in our body, we have to understand first what is a gland in the first place. So we have here your glands. Your glands would now refer to organs that would now secrete your substances. There are two types of your glands. We have what you call your endocrine glands, and we also have what you call your exocrine glands. Your endocrine glands are glands that will now secrete substances known as your hormones. They secrete these hormones directly into the bloodstream. While for your exocrine gland, on the other hand, this would now refer to any organ that will now secrete substances through a duct. What do you mean by duct? So that is D-U-C-T, duct. Duct means daluyan. It means a passage. So before they are able to secrete substances, they will have, or these substances will have to pass through what you call a duct. And these substances are not necessarily called your hormones. For your endocrine glands, you call these substances your hormones. So that is the main difference between your endocrine gland and your exocrine gland. In order for you to memorize the difference between your endocrine glands and your exocrine glands, just remember your endo, D, it will have to be directly secreted to the bloodstream. Hindi kailangan ng duct. While for your exocrine glands, they will now require a duct in order to secrete certain substances. Examples of your endocrine glands would now be your pancreas. We also have your adrenal glands. We have here your pineal glands. We also have your pituitary gland and others. For your exocrine gland, meron tayong sweat glands, salivary glands, the pancreas also. The pancreas can be considered both an exocrine and endocrine gland. Pero what is the difference? The pancreas is considered an exocrine gland if we're now referring to the pancreatic enzymes it is secreting or producing. Your pancreatic enzymes will have to pass through a pancreatic duct so that it can go to your duodenum or in your small intestines. While for your pancreas, it becomes an endocrine gland if it will now secrete what you call your insulin, glucagon, somatostatin, and others. So these are the differences between your exocrine glands and your endocrine glands. Again, endocrine glands, diretso sa bloodstream. Hindi kailangan ng duct. While for your exocrine glands, they will now secrete substances through a duct or through a passage. Let us now proceed with the different functions of your endocrine system. So for your endocrine system, it has various functions because it is mainly important in stimulating and activating the different endocrine organs in our body in order to maintain balance or homeostasis. So one function here is your water balance. In this case, we have your adrenal glands, which will now be responsible in balancing out sodium content in the body. We also have here your pituitary gland, which is also responsible in releasing your antidiuretic hormone. And we also have here another function, your growth and development. Your pituitary gland is very important in your growth and development because it secretes what you call your growth hormone, which will now stimulate the bones to increase amounts or number of your osteocytes, therefore causing or leading to bone development. And then we also have here your cardiac and your blood pressure management. For your cardiac and your blood pressure management, it has something to do with your adrenal glands. It also has something to do with your thyroid glands and other glands in the body. We also have here your immune system regulation. In your immune system development or regulation, we have here your thymus, which is very important during the early stages of a person. Next would be your reproductive function of your endocrine system. Your endocrine system would now have an effect on your testes, and we also have here your ovaries. It is also responsible in regulating certain sex hormones in the body, especially during your puberty, during pregnancy, we also have during birth and others. Next would be your uterine contractions and also your milk production. Milk production is controlled by your hormone known as your prolactin. We also have here uterine contractions, and also your milk letdown or your lactation would now be regulated by your oxytocin. Another function would be your ion management. So it has something to do with balancing out different electrolytes in our body. So again, we have here your adrenal glands, which will be responsible in monitoring or regulating your glucocorticoids and also your mineralocorticoids in the body. Next, we also have here your blood sugar regulation. Gaya ng sabi ko kanina, the adrenal glands will also be the one responsible in that case, your glucocorticoids. And we also have, very important, is your pancreas, because it's the one that is secreting glucagon, and we also have here your insulin. And lastly would be the regulation of your circadian rhythm. Your circadian rhythm has something to do with your sleep-wake cycle. So yung sleeping pattern natin yan. So this is mainly controlled by your pineal gland. Your endocrine system covers a variety of organs. Examples of these organs are your PPP, THAT, or PPP, that. This will be your mnemonic for the different endocrine organs or glands in the endocrine system. So we have here your triple P and that. P would now stand for your pituitary gland. Another P will be for your parathyroid gland. And the last P would be your pineal gland. THAT would stand for T, the thyroid gland. H, your hypothalamus. We also have here your A, which will now stand for your adrenal glands. And lastly would be your T, thymus. So these are the major endocrine glands in our body. Aside from this one, we also have your gonads, the testes, and we also have here your ovaries. However, they are mainly associated kasi with your reproductive system. So we will not go thoroughly with your gonads. However, we will tackle a little bit about these gonads. Let us start with the first one. We have your pituitary gland. So your pituitary gland is also known as your hypophysis, or it is also commonly known as your master gland. Bakit kaya master gland? It is referred to as a master gland because it is the one that controls other endocrine glands. Without it, hindi magre-release ng hormones itong mga endocrine glands such as your thyroid, your pineal, and others. Your pituitary gland is actually a P-shaped structure that is about half an inch and is found on the hypophyseal fossa of your sella turcica in your sphenoid bone. It also is attached to your hypothalamus through a stalk known as your infundibulum. So this is your pituitary gland. Your pituitary gland is divided into two parts. We have the one in front and we have the one at the back. The one in front is known as your anterior pituitary gland. It is mainly made up of your epithelial tissues. The one at the back, on the other hand, is known as your neurohypophysis or your posterior pituitary gland kasi nga nasa likod. And it is mainly made up of your nervous tissues. For your adenohypophysis, it would contain various hormones that will regulate other endocrine organs or it will control other endocrine organs para magre-release itong mga endocrine organs ng hormones. So in this case, kumbaga sila yung nagko-control sa ibang endocrine organs para sabihin niya dun sa endocrine organ, ag-release ka tikas to yung hormone or do not release this type of hormone. Your neurohypophysis, on the other hand, would now contain only two hormones that would now store and release pag kailangan sila. So in this case, sila mismo yung nagre-release ng hormone na mag-a-activate or magkakaroon ng effect sa katawan. Now, let us go to the different hormones found in your anterior pituitary gland. So in your anterior pituitary gland, we have here your flat GMP. Yes, that is FLAT GMP. That will be our mnemonic. F would now stand for your follicle-stimulating hormone. And then we also have here your L, your luteinizing hormone. Your A would now refer to your adrenocorticotropic hormone. Your T would stand for your TSH or your thyroid-stimulating hormone. Next would be your G, H, that is growth hormone. Next is melanocyte-stimulating hormone. And lastly would be your P, which would now refer to your prolactin. So those are the different hormones found in your adenohypophysis. Again, these hormones will control other endocrine glands so that these endocrine glands will eventually release hormones that will have an effect on the body. In your posterior pituitary gland naman, it only contains two hormones. We have here your oxytocin, and we have here the last one would be your antidiuretic hormone, also known as your vasopressin. Okay, we will now start with the first one. F will now stand for your FSH, or your follicle stimulating hormone. Together with your luteinizing hormone, these two are very important in terms of regulating your sex hormones or controlling the ovaries and the testes. For your FSH in females, it will now be the one that will initiate the development of your ovarian follicles. This is again important because it would stimulate your follicular cells to eventually secrete your estrogen, which is the female sex hormone. In your males naman, the effect of your FSH is that it will now increase or stimulate production of sperm in the testes. Now, let's go to your luteinizing hormone. Just like your FSH, yung control nila is more on the sex hormones or dun sa gonads natin. Your LH is very important because it is the one that will now help stimulate the ovulation in females, and it is also responsible in stimulating formation of your corpus luteum, which is then responsible also in releasing progesterone or secreting progesterone in the body for females. For your LH naman in males, it is responsible in stimulating the release or the production of your testosterone in the testes. So, paano ba nagre-release ng FSH at LH ang ating pituitary gland? It is being released when your hypothalamus, which is known as your master of the master gland, will now release what you call your gonadotropin releasing hormone. Your gonadotropin releasing hormone will now be the one responsible in stimulating the pituitary gland para ilabas niya or magsisikret siya ng FSH and your LH. Once na-release din yung FSH and LH, it will have an effect on the testes for males, and it will also have an effect on the ovaries for females. Next would be your ACTH, or your adrenocorticotropic hormone. So for your adrenocorticotropic hormone naman, it is also known as your corticotropin. So this is usually associated with the release and regulation and also the production of your cortisol and other glucocorticoids found in the body. So in this case, usually yung glucocorticoids natin, it is released by the cortex of the adrenal glands. The ACTH is released by your pituitary gland para once it goes to the bloodstream, tapos dumaan siya sa adrenal glands, it will then stimulate or activate the effects of your adrenal glands. What are the effects or the functions of your adrenal glands? That is to release cortisol and glucocorticoids in the body. So, your glucocorticoids are usually found in the cortex or outer aspect of your adrenal glands. So, kailan ba usually nare-release ang ACTH sa katawan natin? Your ACTH is released by your pituitary gland only when your hypothalamus will now release what you call your corticotropin releasing hormone. Your CRH, or your corticotropin releasing hormone, is usually released by your hypothalamus during situations where nagkakaroon ng physical trauma such as injury. What else? We also have here low blood sugar. Next would now be your thyroid stimulating hormone. Your thyroid stimulating hormone is a hormone that will now activate or stimulate your thyroid glands to release the thyroid hormones, specifically known as your T3 and your T4. Just like the question in the other hormones in your pituitary gland, paano ba sila nasisikret or lumalabas? So they're being secreted by your pituitary gland. Pag again, yung hypothalamus, it will also release what you call your thyroid releasing hormone. So in this case, yung hypothalamus magre-release ng TRH or thyroid releasing hormone, and then ang gagawin niya is that it's going to stimulate your pituitary gland to release your TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, so that eventually it will go to your thyroid glands. It will now stimulate your thyroid glands to release the thyroid hormones, mainly known as your T3 and your T4. So these are again very important in metabolism. Take note, the release of your thyroid-releasing hormone in the hypothalamus will now depend dun sa level ng T3 or T4 sa blood natin. So, for example, na-detect ng blood natin na, konti lang ang thyroid hormones natin. It will then send a message to the brain, and then the brain, specifically the hypothalamus, will release the TRH.